Transmissions jammed. Proximity coverage only. Backup activated. System rebooted.
Hello everyone and welcome to the premiere episode of Proximity Coverage, an all-new Division-focused show, podcast, whatever you'd like to call it. I'm your host, RogueGold, and I'm incredibly thrilled to have you all here to begin this journey with me. I want to kick this off by giving a bit of an introduction on me personally, both my Division history as well as my history in content creation, just in case you haven't seen me before. I assume most of the people watching this have seen my channel and my content, and you're probably subscribed if you've seen my notifications about this, but just in case you haven't, I wanted to give a quick introduction. So, let's start with the Division. I started playing the Division day one of Division 1 launching. If you've seen my stuff before, then you know that I'm a primarily PvP player. I want to give a disclaimer there because I love looter shooters in general. I've spent a lot of my, life gaming, doing MMO type games and looter shooter games. I played World of Warcraft pretty religiously for like 2 years. And then before Division came out, Destiny was pretty much my main game. Destiny 1 all throughout most of its, 2 years pretty much straight through. And then the third year it was kind of split between Division and that. So yeah, I've always loved looter shooters. And while Division PvP is my favorite thing in the game, and while that's the primary thing that I love to do, that doesn't mean that I don't love PvE as well. I love the game because it's a looter shooter, because you can use your gear in all these different types of ways. You can make your own builds. You can go play PvP or PvE. So that's kind of my background. And then, of course, been playing Division ever since day one of it coming out. Playing Division 2 the whole time. I've taken a lot more breaks with Division 2, as I'm sure a lot of other people have as well. But yeah, as you can see on my channel, I've been making content for pretty much, a year and 2 months straight. So it's been great. As far as my content, if you have not seen my channel before, then you might not know that my favorite thing to do on the channel is to have discussions, based around obviously the Division. And so part of my goal for this podcast and why I wanted to start it is because I thought that this would be a great outlet to not only engage with you guys more, as you're going to see later, we're going to get to some community submitted questions, but also I thought it would be a really great way for me to have a better platform to just have broad discussions on whatever every week. You guys are going to vote the central topics that we're going to discuss on here. And so I just thought it would be a really great way to do that. We're going to have, discussions about stuff from Division 1, Division 2, potentially Division 3. I don't want to say it's confirmed because it's not, but we're going to talk about the future of the franchise, at least in general. And so, yeah, I just thought it would be a really great way to do that, because if I just put out these videos every week about random topics, I feel like not everyone would necessarily be interested in listening to that. But I think on this podcast, combined with the fact that we're going to do these discussions as well as answer a bunch of your guys' questions about anything Division related, I thought it could be a really cool opportunity for both me and you guys to both benefit, do some stuff that we both enjoy, hear my thoughts on stuff, answer your guys' questions. I think it's going to be a really great time. And so, yeah, I really hope you guys are excited for it, because I certainly am. And so thank you very much for being here. And yeah, I think it's going to be a great time. So for the agenda for this first episode, we just got the introduction out of the way, and now I'm going to get to questions. Now, just for clarification, in future weeks, we will have a primary topic that is going to start off the first half of the show, and I will get to those ones that you guys are going to vote on at the end, because it is going to be a community voted topic. I'm going to have 3 options every week, and you guys vote, and whichever one has the most votes and is the most popular will be the one I talk about for the following week. So, again, that will be towards the end of this episode. I will announce what those are, and you can go vote on my community tab on which one you want to hear for next week, as well as just leave your thoughts on which one you want to hear in the comments. But for the rest of this episode, it will be me answering questions that you guys have submitted over the past week, 2 weeks, ever since I announced this podcast was going to happen. If you want to send in questions for future weeks, please do. I need as many questions as possible just to make sure we have plenty of stuff to go through. We have had so many people already submit, and so for everyone who has, thank you very much. Mostly everyone's questions will be answered this week. Some of the people who submitted multiple, I saved some of theirs for following episodes just because, we had a lot to get through, and I want to make sure I have some as a safety net for those future ones. So if you're listening to this and you have any question about anything Division related, 1, 2, or 3, that you want me to answer on this podcast, then please send it in. You can leave it in the comments of this, in the comments of my other videos. You can send it to me on Twitter. Some people have already done that. Just make sure that you label it that you want me to answer on proximity coverage so that I'm not thinking you just want me to answer you there, because obviously I've been doing that ever since I've started my content in the comments anyway. So yeah, it's going to be a great time. If you have questions, please send them in, and I think it's going to be great. And so with that out of the way, we move on to the questions that you guys have submitted over these past weeks. Again, thank you very much for doing so. And yeah, most of your guys' questions should be in this first episode, and so I hope that I deliver. Starting off, we have a bunch of questions from CZ Blitz. Thank you very much for sending all these in. And again, some of these will be saved for episode 2 or potentially even more future episodes. But I have chosen out several viewers to answer here because I think they will fit in well. The first one from him is, when it comes to Div 2 raids, since there are obvious ties to each faction, can we expect another one from the Outcast or the Hyenas? TBH, I would love a Hyena stronghold with the members we've never seen, Mayhem, Zodiac. So yeah, it's a great question. As far as are we still going to see them, I don't think so. You might have seen in some of my other content that I think the Division 2 is coming to the end of its life cycle. Honestly, I think TU12 is probably the last major update we are going to get, but there's, like I've said, there is a very, possible chance that we could see another expansion. I think Division 3 announcement is more likely, and I think it's more likely that Division 2 is going to go into kind of maintenance mode, similar to how Division 1 did in Year 3, but it's certainly possible. Do I think that at some point the devs conceptualized having a raid for every faction? Absolutely. I'm sure that at some point in time they thought, we'll start with Operation Dark Hours, then we're going to have the Foundry with the True Sons, and then maybe later on in Year 2 we'd have the Hyena and the Outcast raids. I'm sure that was at least in talks at some point. But considering that Iron Horse took so long, it was supposed to come out in October of 2019 and it didn't come out until the very end of June 2020, I see it being unlikely, especially since the raids weren't developed by Massive. I should look into what that partner studio is. I forget which one it was, but a different studio actually developed the raids, and so I personally just don't see it coming. But I will say, I know there are, and someone else asked about this too, I think, there are, extra places for frames in the hallway where they put the world's first people. There's, they could always make more emblems for if you do clan runs. I don't know if you know, but you can change your clan emblem to one of Dark Hours and Iron Horse if you complete the raid with your clan. Like I said, I'm sure at some point they conceptualized those things being in there, so that's why they added the space for those to be added, but I don't think we're going to see any more. But I will say that at one point, what I thought would be a really cool Outcast raid would be if you've done the Easter egg that's in the Roosevelt Island mission. If you don't know, there's one in there. You can go light up a bunch of owl statues. Once you complete the mission, you can run back through, and it unlocks a secret room towards the end. And when you go in there, there's a comm, and it kind of lets you know about this secret Moravian society within the Outcasts, like a subsect of them, I guess, or some sort of secret cult. It sounded really cool, and I thought that they could potentially delve into that for a raid. Instead of it just being regular Outcasts, they could have it be this like really sinister and mysterious, cult and subset within the main faction. So I thought that could have been really cool. They could have done something with the Moravian society there. But yeah, I don't think we're going to see it at this point. But thanks for the question. We'll just have to see if we're going to get even another expansion or not. Blitz's next question. Speaking of Stealth Archer, would a PvE melee system similar to Sandman break the game? I'm going to be honest. I tried to look up what this looked like. I searched up Sandman game and like melee system. I couldn't really find what you were referencing, but I did make a video, was that probably a month ago now, talking about how I think a melee system could benefit PvP in the Division 3, how that could potentially dissuade chicken dancing from happening so that the devs didn't have to outright nerf movement in order to try and stop people from doing it. I thought a melee system could actually be the solution there. So yeah, I think a melee system could certainly work in the game. I don't think that it should become, a thing where you have melee builds, and I kind of outlined this in the video. I just think that there should be, first of all, I think there should be melee weapons that you could slot in instead of pistols, and I think that it should be set up in such a way. I actually think the melee, right now works pretty well, where if you melee an ad, not the heavies, but the smaller ads, they often get staggered. It's a good opportunity for you to get up there, melee them, back up a little bit, and get some good shots in. I think that works well, but if they just added melee weapons to allow you to do a bit more damage, to do a bit more with that, I think that could work really well, both in PvE and PvP. So those are my thoughts on the melee system. Thylander went on Twitter and, in response to my video that someone linked to him, he said he didn't think it was a good idea. So I don't know if we're really going to see that at any point in the future, but it's certainly a possibility. So that was a good question. Next question from Blitz. Would an exotic bow be a good thing? I get that we have a crossbow spec, but I've never hit more than 20 mil with all reds plus sacrifice. If they announce a Division 3, I'm probably going to make a personal wish list video of what I want to see in that. And you know what's going to be on that list is that I want them to add bows. I've wanted them to have combat bows in this game for such a long time. I don't know why I like bows so much, but when they added them in Destiny, that was like actually one of my main drivers to go and buy Forsaken because I wasn't playing Destiny 2 at the time. And I just love having bows in games. I think that, you know, what surprises me is that from initial conception, Division 2 didn't actually have a new gun archetype or a new weapon archetype. We got rifles in the end, but if you didn't know, rifles weren't actually thought to be added to the game until after they presented the game to us at E3 of 2018. Thylander said that once they sort of looked at some of the talent pools that they had for marksman rifles and ARs, they had single shot weapons in there that weren't really going to fit with some of those talents. And so they figured, why don't we add a new gun class called rifles that can sort of be the in-between for those? And in the end, I think rifles were a good addition to the game. I like that they're in there now. But for me, I think about Destiny 2 to Destiny 1. Destiny 2 added several new types of guns when it came out. It added SMGs, it added grenade launchers, it added trace rifles. There may be others that I'm forgetting, but I feel like when you have a new entry to a franchise like Division 2 to Division 1, you should have some sort of new stuff to play with. And so we got new skills, and that was, of course, very exciting. But as far as guns and weapons are concerned, I certainly hope that Division 3 brings us some sort of new weapons to play with. And I think bows would be a really great one in there, along with melee weapons like I was just talking about. The only other thing I really have to note on bows is that they were actually mentioned by Thylander at one point. I can't remember if this is on Twitter or on a stream, but he said that at one point they did actually try them out. They tried like coding them into the game because the Outcast used them, obviously. And he said they were having trouble making it work, if I recall correctly, with like the cover system. There was some weird like animation stuff with going in cover and aiming over and shooting it. So, you know, I think they've thought about it at some point in time. Could we potentially see them revisit it in the future? I certainly hope so. I would love if bows came in. You know, I would just love to use them. So, yeah. As far as an exotic bow, yeah, I think if they were to add bows, I doubt there would be that many models. Maybe we would only have 2 to 3 or 4, you know, high-end bow archetypes, but they could certainly add in an exotic one that has maybe explosive bolts, so that could be the one that has. So, yeah, I would love to see bows, and I certainly hope we do in the Division 3. Next up from Blitz, talking about what does the future of Division 2 hold after the Fei Lao mission, and what tides players over until the Division 3. We might get into spoilers on the Fey mission later, but I won't right now. Basically saying because Nightmare got canceled and all of that, what does Division 2 hold? Like I've said before, I think Division 2 is done after that. I think they're going to soon after announce the Division 3, probably in March, have a similar stream to when they announced the Division 2. And I think what holds people over until Div 3, they'll probably do the same thing. They'll probably add maybe 1 or 2 new legendary missions. People have been asking for that ever since Warlords dropped. And so I think seeing some of those is very possible and likely. And I think also we'll probably get something similar to the shields from Division 1. I think that while the system wasn't necessarily, you know, overly innovative or exciting, it was something to do. And it was something fun to be able to get some rewards for the Division 2 while you were still playing the Division 1. And so I certainly see them doing something like that again, maybe with some new incentives, new mechanics, whatever. I see that being what tides players over until the Division 3, which hopefully could come out in March 2022, assuming there have been no delays because of COVID or other things. So yeah, that's what I think on that. And then last question from Blitz. Again, thank you for all these questions, and the rest will be answered in upcoming episodes. What is your favorite setup from any title update ever? That's a good one. What is my favorite build from any title update ever? You know, I might have to say in TU9, I made a build video on it. I had one that was a primarily solo build, but I did use it in groups. That was probably the closest thing to a hybrid that you'll ever see in this game, like similar to Division 1. I was using a Honey Badger, a lot of incoming repair back when that, well, I guess it still works on heals, so that was still there, and a what do they call it? A restoration hive? Whatever the healing hive is called. And it was really fun. It was like some combination of getting the heals and making that, you know, help me do more damage, with an AR. And it was a lot of fun. It was very reminiscent of some stuff I would use in Div 1. And it was pretty powerful. It was a popular video. You can go find it in my playlists. What I call it, the Chaos Storm, I think. For like a DZ solo build. It was a lot of fun. So from TU9, that would be my favorite setup for any title update. And it's too bad that they had to add Adrenaline Rush and Intimidate to kind of ruin that, because there's no chance I could ever use that now. But yeah, that was my favorite one. Thanks for the questions, man. All right, next up, I wanted to point this out. Both Blitz as well as Adam and Christopher Copeland all asked about survival. And while I'm not going to answer this here, the reason being that that is one of the topics I'm going to have you guys vote on for main topics in future episodes. So if you want to hear more about survival, my thoughts on survival both in the past and how it could be used in the future, then definitely go and vote on next week's topic. And if that's the most popular one, you will hear about it there. But one thing I did want to touch on that part was part of Chris's question was survival ever planned for the Division 2? And interesting enough, a lot of people have said that since the dev said it's not going to come, that they think that there were never any plans for it. What I always point people back to is that SkillUp did an interview with Julian Garrity and Matthias Carlson back before the Division 2 launched at E3 of 2018. And SkillUp asked Julian about survival. He's like, do you think we could see it come back? You know, it was my favorite mode. It was a lot of other people's favorite mode. And Julian basically said, yeah. He was like, I'd be very surprised if we didn't see survival return for the Division 2. So at that point, I was like, all right, we're getting it. He was like, you know, we didn't like how it split the player base in Division 1, you know, it being its own standalone DLC. So yeah, I think we'll see it in Division 2. And I was like, okay, that's great. And then it never came. So I think at some point it was planned. But I guess we'll never know at this point because they're probably never going to address that again. But thanks for those questions, guys. And yeah, if you want to hear more about survival, then go and vote that for the main topic next week. Next up, we have two similar questions, both from Tot Kitten and Sean Clark, asking about the Lady Death and Adrenaline Rush /+ Intimidate. My thoughts on those, and should they be included in the future? I hate them, honestly. Like, well, here's the deal. Here's what annoys me the most about those things. In the context of Division 1, Lady Death and Adrenaline Rush Intimidate would have been some awesome talents in an exotic, right? They would have been so cool because that was the style of Division 1, was more run and gun, out of cover, burst healing, all that kind of stuff. So why would the devs go in, right, in Division 2, and they've said very clearly, we want this to be a cover-based experience, both in PvE and PvP. And the mechanics reflect that. The movement is slower, you go into cover, and you're, out of cover, you're a lot squishier, you have no burst heals to counteract being melted down. So it's very clear that they're, what they wanted you to do in Division 2 was use cover. So why on earth do you punish the PvP players who played like they did in Division 1 and make them, force them to play more cover-based in Div 2, and then you go in and add stuff like the Lady Death and Adrenaline Rush and Intimidate? Like, what the hell? That's such a slap in the face to be like, oh, we want you to play this way, but we're still going to give you stuff to play out of cover if you want to, even though it sucks and it's like nowhere near as fun as it was in Div 1. That's what annoys me more than anything else. But beyond that, they're super OP for Div 2 because there's no burst healing. You can't have stuff in the game. I made videos on this before, but you can't have stuff in the game that does that much damage up close without having some form of burst healing in order to counteract it. Like, the only thing that you really have is Unbreakable, which is kind of a stupid talent anyway, in my opinion. I think that if burst healing was a thing, Unbreakable shouldn't be in the game anyway, because it's basically Nomad. I don't know why they keep adding these cheesy talents that are just going to get abused. But those are my thoughts on the Lady Death and all that, is that it's really dumb that it's in a game where they don't want you to play that way anyway. But I hope what it signifies, since they all came during Year 2, is that in the future, in Div 3, they're going to move back towards a more Division 1 style of gameplay. In which case, sure, if they want to bring that stuff back, then go for it, because I think it would work a lot better there. But in the context of Div 2, and in the context of how they want you to play that game, I think it's pretty stupid. Now, Tot Kitten also asked a follow-up about how would I go about improving PvP in Div 2. I feel like it's a slightly futile topic because I doubt they're ever going to change anything in Div 2, but I will say that he specifically asked about, bringing the skill gap back that is currently lacking. I think the primary thing is burst healing. My ideal Division 3 PvP scenario would be that they ensure through gear, through talents, through everything, they ensure that you cannot be overly tanky in PvP, that the time to kill is pretty quick. I think that in general, tanks in the division, even in PvE, should be restricted to skill stuff. Either it be shields, some sort of new tank skills. I feel like that's the best way to make the game balanced. But especially for PvP, we've always had issues with tanks getting a ton of damage, right? So I think if they were to ensure a quick time to kill, then you can bring burst healing back for, whether it's first aid, whether it's, healing other people up in burst manners. And so I think that's how they bring the skill gap back, because the timing with healing in Division 1 was what dictated so many fights. There were other things, sure, like what kind of build you had, your knowledge of the movement and the map and all that kind of stuff, but those are also sort of in Div 2. I think the biggest thing to bring back the skill gap would be burst healing, and for people to have to relearn the timing on that and have talents associated with it, like critical save in Division 1. So those are my biggest things, but I don't think we're going to see any of that in Division 2, to be honest with you. I think that our biggest hope for PvP is Div 3, and that's why I've been pushing it so heavily, because like I said earlier in the episode, PvP is why I love this game so much. So thanks for the questions, guys, and those are my thoughts on those topics. Next up, we have several from Aaron B. Thank you very much, Aaron, and again, some of yours will be answered in future episodes. But to start off, he asked, what are your thoughts on the gear choices in Div 1 versus Div 2? Do you think there are too many brand options in Div 2? Should classified gear sets be a thing again in Div 3? All right, thanks, Aaron. So, do I think there are too many brand options? Not really. I think that the more brands, the better, honestly. As long as, they've added a good way to be able to target your loot now in Division 2. I have kind of separate thoughts on that, but we'll save that for a future discussion. My thoughts on the gear choices aren't that brands are bad, but I think the gear is bad. I think when they first announced Gear 2.0, I was really excited for it. I was like, this is going to be great. We're going to have a lot more of a balanced gear game. There's going to be some actual trade-offs you have to take into consideration. But that really only persisted for the core attributes, which I still think is a good addition to have you have to choose between weapon damage and armor and all that kind of stuff. But then you can roll crit chance and crit damage on every piece of gear, which means you can roll 6 red or 6 blues and then get a ton of crit. So overall, I think Gear 2.0 didn't pan out in the way they hoped. I don't know what they think about it, but I know that for PvP, I don't really like how it worked out. It also just, heavily simplified the gear from any previous state we'd known it. I think Year 2 of Division 1 gear, I think it needed changing because of how it made PvP function with 3.11.7s and all that kind of stuff. But, honestly, it was more fun than this because at least the gear was unique, was different. You had talents on a bunch of different pieces. You had different, numbers and amounts of mod slots. You had all these different types of stats that weren't all going to just go up to God roll. So I don't know. I hope that Division 3, we see a Gear 3.0. As far as classified sets go, I think classifieds kind of ruin Div 1. They were an awesome incentive for the global events. I've said this before, that I think that the reward structure for global events in Division 1 was much more enticing than it is in Div 2. But as far as classified sets specifically, I think they kind of ruined the balance, not only in PvP, but they were kind of the go-to for everything. And I don't find that to be very fun or compelling. I would much rather be able to make my own build that is just as strong as some sort of pre-made set. So classifieds as they were in Div 1, no, but if they want to do something different with them that makes them not necessarily the best thing in the game but still enticing in other ways, sure, they could bring that back for global events. I'd be fine with that. Moving on to Aaron's other questions. What are 3 to 5 features of Division 1 that need to be included in the Division 3? Good one. Well, right off the bat, I'll say the setting. I really want winter to return in the Division 3. It was super iconic, super fun. I feel the winter in Division 1 a lot more than I feel the summer in Division 2, and so I would really love for that to return. What else? Larger DZ, the concepts of the DZ in Div 1 I really want to carry over. The burst healing I want to carry over, like I was talking about, for sure. What else? What else in Division 1 was good that I want carried over? I'll say Survival and Last Stand would be my other 2s that I want carried over. Obviously improved upon and iterated on for, these new iterations of them, but those would be the last 2 that I want in. And then he said, what are 3 to 5 features from the Division 2 that you want included in the Division 3? Certainly this is hard to say without sounding hypocritical, but the the variety of locations that you can visit in the Division 2 is really fun. Like Camp White Oak is my favorite main mission maybe across the entire Division franchise because it's just so different from anywhere you've ever visited. You know, it's out in the woods. It's you go to Camp David, even though it's called White Oak. It's just really, really badass. It's fun. And so they don't necessarily have to have helicopters take you everywhere in Div 3, but if the map can encompass some more variety in locations, that'd be really awesome. So that's one thing I would like to see brought over, you know, the spirit carried on from the Division 2. Additionally, the core and philosophy of the open world in Division 2 I think is fantastic. I love control points, and I love how dynamic the open world is. So both of those, you know, the whole concept of the open world, if they want to expand upon it, great. You know, like I've suggested, you could maybe, in the PvE world, maybe you should be able to see other players that aren't in your group in the open world. That would be cool. But in general, the concept and the dynamicism, is that a word, of the open world from Div 2, I would love for that to carry over into the future of the franchise. What else? I personally would love to see raids. I don't know how feasible that is because I really have no gauge of how successful those were for the game overall in terms of attracting new players or anything like that. So I don't know how likely it is we'll see raids return, but I would love them personally because I love doing them and I still love doing them. So that would be one for me. Maybe also the... people are going to get mad. I'd say the clothing. I don't necessarily think the clothing in Division 2 is better than the Division 1, but I do think that there are more options that to customize your character. Actually, beyond just clothing, I'll say the customization in general. The transmog system that they added with TU11, I love that. I love how much you can, you know, customize how your character looks. I love that you can put skins on every piece of gear, different dyes. And the clothing choices as far as having sleeves or having shorts, you know, compared to the Division 1, even though it was in the winter, I understand why they did that. But that would be my thing, is the customization from the Division 2, I think is far superior to the Division 1, and it makes it, you know, I feel like I can customize my agent more and I can set myself apart from other players that I come across in the Dark Zone or in the Boo or wherever, and I think that's a fun thing to have. So I would definitely carry that over into the Division 3. Next question from Aaron. For Division 3, would it be best to maintain the armor bar in Division 2 versus the combo armor/health bar in Division 1? Did we have a combo bar? I mean, armor was a stat in Div 1, but it just contributed to your overall toughness bar, right? So I would personally like to see that return. I would much rather we see the Division 1's, I'm just going to call it health because that's what it was visually. I'd rather we see health return rather than the combo of armor and health in Division 2. I've said before, I don't really know why we had to get armor. I understand that it's very nice to be able to look at someone and see their toughness bar and be able to see how many increments of armor they have and be like, oh, he's got a tanky build on because I can see how much armor he has on his bar. But why couldn't they just do that for health? Because I find that the armor and health combo in Div 2 is just really clunky. I hate having my armor break and having the screen like flash some sort of rainbow color. If you slow it down, that's what it looks like. It's just kind of weird to me. And so it doesn't really service realism because the Division isn't realistic in the first place. I don't think it really services gameplay. And so I would much rather we see just a purely health bar return with those same, you know, visual increments so that people can look at you and see how much health or toughness or whatever they call it you have. I think that's a good feature of it, so they should carry that over. But I would rather see the strictly health bar return from the Division 1 as far as that is concerned. And then last up, both Aaron and Cashnix asked about where I would like to see the next Division game take place, whether it stay in the US or possibly go abroad. As far as the narrative goes, I don't know if it makes sense for the Division to leave the US. Maybe if, I won't spoil the ending of Season 4, but maybe because of that, our agents would go worldwide. But I would love to see Paris. I feel like that would be a really cool, especially in the winter. Like I said earlier, I would love if the winter time returned. So Paris in the winter, it would be a pretty cool pick for me. But again, I don't know how realistic that is narrative-wise. If it were to stay in the US, I feel like Aaron mentioned, Chicago could be cool, or Boston even. Again, I've never really been to these places, so I can't comment on how, you know, good they would necessarily be for a game environment. But yeah, somewhere there. But if they can go abroad, I would love to see Paris or somewhere in Europe. That would be really cool. Aaron then also asks, are there any game modes in other games you've played that you think would work well in the Division 3? Yes. I said this before Div 2 came out, and obviously it didn't come true, so I'll say it again, that I think Rush from Battlefield would be a really awesome mode to see in the Division. If you don't know what Rush is, it's basically, there are two teams. One team starts on one end of the map, one on the other, and there are a set of 2 points that the attacking team has to capture before they can move on to the next set of 2. So in total, I would say there's 5 or 6 sets of 2 points, A and B, and each time that the attackers capture those 2, they get to advance on the map, and they get to move up one zone and then try to take the next 2 points while the defending team tries to fend them off. I feel like this could have worked really well in the original Division 1 Dark Zone. One team starts in DZ1, one starts in 5, and the people from 5 are trying to hold the attackers from, pushing all the way up to Zone 5 by capturing these 2 points. I feel like that would be a really great mode for the Division, not only because it would just be a fun PvP mode, but because the cover system would work really well for attack and defend. I feel like in general, that's something they haven't really delved into anywhere as far as PvP is concerned. So I feel like that would be a really fun mode. And, hopefully we might see something like that in Div 3. Again, I feel like it could work really well and it could be a lot of fun. So that's my vote for what other game mode could come into the game. But thanks for the questions, Aaron, and again, the rest of yours will be answered in future episodes. Moving on, we have several from Daedric, so thank you very much for all of these. And again, the ones that I don't answer will be answered in future episodes. First one from him: should the rarity system be different, or would adding a new layer of rarity, something like platinum, meaning it's better than red or exotic, just be unnecessary? No, I've actually had the same thought. I made a video on it maybe 2-3 months ago, that I think it would be really cool if they had a rarity above exotic, where I don't know what it would be, maybe platinum, like you said, or something like that, where you could make your own talent. I laid it all out in that video, so if you want to see more on it, you can go there. But basically, like when you get the piece, and maybe for getting it, you have to acquire a bunch of different materials for it that are from different sources in the game, so they're very hard to get. But once you get one, you can then choose your own talent by kind of going through a table. You can choose different aspects of the cooldown, the ability, the amount of the ability, sort of the regenerate. I guess that's the same as cooldown. I laid it all out a lot better in that video, but being able to choose your own talent in such a manner where it can't be OP because there's a point system allocated to what parts of the talent you make strong yourself could be really cool. And then there's a lot of replayability there because say you get one of those pieces and you select one path of how you want your talent to function, and then you're like, well, I want this other one too. I want the talent to be able to do this if I want a different, type of playstyle. Then you have incentive to go back and, play the game, play all these different aspects to try and get another one. And if they were pretty rare, then that would create a lot of longevity for people to play the game, beyond just acquiring the one and done exotics like they have it now currently in Div 2. So I would love that. And so that's a good question. If you want to hear more about that, again, go see that video. But those are my thoughts as far as that is concerned. Daedric also asks, do you think a sequel should have both PvE and PvP, or should the next title focus solely on one or the other? I think both. I love looter shooters because you can get gear and then use it in either scenario. And again, I love Division 4 PvP, but I also love and enjoy the PvE. So I think certainly they should try and do both. They've had issues with balancing in the past, but I think there's certainly room for improvement. And so, I would love to see both come back in the Division 3 for sure. Next question, should raids be included in Div 3? If so, then should there be more complex mechanics and more team play rather than gunplay? I would love to see raids come back. Like I said earlier, I don't know how likely that is because I don't know how successful they were for the game overall, but I would love to see raids come back. As far as being more complex, I feel like Iron Horse was a really good raid. I did a review on it and I gave it an 8.5 out of 10 only because some of the, I guess if you want to say some of the bosses weren't great, like the first one in Iron Horse was pretty, the mechanics didn't really apply. The final fight didn't really have that much mechanical complexity, but I will say that Lieutenant Gray, was that his name? No, that was the first guy. Major Williams was the third boss. That was a fantastic fight. That's my favorite raid fight in the entire game of the Division 2 because it was so mechanically complex. There were so many things going on. You had to monitor. It was such a cool environment. That fight, if they want to set that as a standard for any future raids that may come to this franchise, I would love that because I love that fight so much. So stuff like that, if raids are to come back, I would love to see more of that. So certainly, yes, I would like to see them in Div 3, but again, we'll see how likely that is. And then lastly, should Division have an in-game currency as a way to avoid heavy microtransactions and basically all that kind of stuff? Here are my thoughts on that. I think that if they want Division 3 to be a long-term game, because I think originally they wanted Div 2 to kind of go the Destiny model and be a long-term game. If they want Division 3 to do that, they're going to need to set up a better microtransaction store. And maybe you guys will disagree with me, and that's fine, but I am not against microtransactions that are just for purely cosmetic stuff, right? I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you can acquire enough cosmetics in the game, then I don't see a problem with then having a store where you can get some really cool stuff for extra money because it's just cosmetic, right? So those are my thoughts on that. But if you disagree with that, I understand, and that's fine. But if they want to do that in Div 3 and they want Div 3 to go long term, they're going to need to create something similar to the Eververse from Destiny, where you have some really cool and really unique stuff. Maybe there's glowing effects on different guns and gear. There's all this different kind of stuff. If they can do that, and if they can create a more appealing storefront, because the cosmetic store in Div 2 really isn't that appealing. It's hard to find. It's not that visually enticing. So I feel like they really need to create a specific vendor in your boo or wherever and have them have a pretty cool layout and a cool menu with cool stuff to buy. And then I feel like that would be successful. And I don't morally have a problem with that, but if you do, I understand. And so maybe you'll disagree with me there. But those are my thoughts on microtransactions. Thanks for all the questions, Daedric. Again, all of yours, I have all of them stored and I will answer them in future episodes, but I just wanted to get to some other ones. So thank you very much for submitting. Next up, Kingslayers asks, what things would you remove from Div 2 for Div 3? PvE and PvP answers separate, please. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that I don't like about Div 2 comes down to the mechanics. I'd remove the movement system. I'd remove the gear system. I'd remove the lack of burst healing. Basically, I'm saying now what I would add, but just the fundamentals of Div 2 really don't sit right with me. The content I like, well, for the most part. I mean, I like the raids. Honestly, I would remove strongholds unless they make them more like incursions, because I feel like that was kind of a wasted potential there. But yeah, honestly, I like the open world. I guess I would remove the concepts of the DZ and make it, again, more like a Division 1 DZ. I'd remove conflict in its current state. I feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done to conflict to make it more on par with what a true PvP-like system could be. But yeah, honestly, it's just the mechanics of Div 2 that I don't like. Like, primarily, that's what doesn't sit right with me about this game. So I'd remove a lot of the philosophies and a lot of the mechanics of what Div 2 went for, and kind of go back to the drawing board as far as that is concerned to create a more similar system to Div 1, but one that's more balanced, right? I'm not opposed to there being more balanced, because I know that Division 1's system and all that created some unbalances. So yeah, that's what I would say as far as that is concerned. So yeah, thanks for the question, King. Jim asks about success in the DZ and PvP. He says he's done lots of PvE, but he always gets destroyed in PvP. I know practice makes perfect, but what else leads to success in the DZ? Yeah, thank you. What leads to success in the DZ? Well, I will always advocate that more so than your build, more so than your own skill. Of course, those things matter, and you have to practice with those. But if you play PvE, then you have a good sense of how the mechanics of the game work, right? I think the most important thing in the DZ is situational awareness, both knowing what the map layout is around you, knowing where you can fall back to, where you can flank, where you can push. All that kinds of stuff is invaluable. Oftentimes when I play with people, I'm the one that's the annoying guy that's shouting out all the different callouts, right? But that's because I know that that's what's going to keep us alive. If we're fighting a 4v6 out in the middle of a street, that's probably not going to go our way. Something's going to go wrong. So I always try and think, okay, what's around us? What kind of interiors? What kind of hallways? What kind of all that kind of stuff can we use to fall back to funnel these people we're fighting? All that kind of stuff. That's what wins you fights in the DZ, I think, honestly. But of course, you need to have a build that works for PvP, because a lot of stuff in this game does not work well for PvP. But of course, all that stuff you can find on YouTube. You can find build videos and such. So I would say definitely the most important thing is situational awareness, learning the DZs. I would say if you don't know them, just go in there and start looking around. Start going down some different streets, seeing what's around, so that in the future when you fight there, you know what's around you, you can fall back to and use to your advantage, because I think the environment is just as lethal a weapon as your gun. So that's my answer for that. Thanks, Jim. Next up, AU Nexus asks me to address the cheaters and hackers and VPN lag switchers in the game in the DZ on PC. I feel like I'm not really that qualified to talk about this because I don't play on PC. I haven't experienced it myself, but he notes, the complete ignorance of the devs and not even wanting to comment on it. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that I don't think that it's not them wanting to not comment on it, but I bet it's the same deal as PvP in general, which is that no one's working on it. We haven't got anything from, for PvP in the last 12 months almost. And so I really just don't think anyone's working on it. Bruce was doing quality of life changes and balancing changes, but I just simply don't think they have the manpower to really address the amount of cheaters that are in the game. But again, I haven't experienced it, so I can't really comment on how bad it is. I think our best bet is Div 3, like I've said for other stuff. So that's my thoughts on that, Nexus. But thank you for submitting. And the final question, the one I wanted to say for last here, is from Peon. I'm not going to read his entire thing here because it's a very long paragraph, but basically what he's asking is, how will Massive market the Division 3 to a burned audience? Obviously, people had very high hopes for Division 2. Massive said they learned their lessons, and then it didn't really turn out to be that way in a lot of scenarios and cases. So he's asking, how will they make these fans who've been burned by Division 2 come back for a third entry, make the game profitable to wider audiences? And I think there's two answers to that. The first one is that they need to bring the stuff we want, right? We need a bigger DZ to return. We need more fun mechanics to return. We need survival to return, all these different things. So that's a given, right? And if they don't do that, I think they're going to be in serious trouble. But then the other component to this that I think is really crucial and that I really hope they sell is the promise of next gen. If there is a Division 3, I sincerely hope it is next gen exclusive, because what that will allow them to do, as far as just designing different components of the game, what sort of, systems and ideas and all that kind of stuff they want to implement, the possibilities are so much wider if they just make it next gen only. If they still have to make Division 3 conform to the Xbox One and the PS4, I'm going to be frankly disappointed. And I think that we are probably going to be disappointed as far as what they can do innovation-wise, what sort of new ideas they can bring to the game. But if it is next-gen exclusive, then that's what they sell the game on. They sell the promise of next-gen, what they can do in the open world. Can we have more than 24 people running around in a zone, more than the Division 1? Can we see other people that aren't in our group in the PvE open world? Can we do all these different things? Because that's what next gen is going to allow us to do. They can do improvements with the AI as far as ray tracing is concerned. I think, and beyond all else, you can do 60 FPS and 4K from the start, right? That's what those new consoles can handle. So I think that if they want Div 3 to work, and if they want those burn players to come back and new audiences to come to the game, they need to show the technical power that they have and the sort of new innovations they can make now that it's next-gen exclusive. So yeah, I think the biggest thing to market Div 3 is to really push the promise of next-gen. And I think that's what's going to bring people in, because they can say the same thing. They can say, oh, we've learned from our mistakes, we'll do better this time. But people have heard that before. So the thing that's different this time, and what I think they really need to push hard into, is the promise of next-gen. Thanks for that question, Peon. That's going to be our last one for today. Thank you to everyone who submitted. Again, if yours didn't get answered, the rest will be answered in either next week's episode or upcoming one soon. And a reminder that if you want your question answered on the show, on Proximity Coverage Episode 2 or future ones, then be sure to submit it as many as you want, wherever you want. On this video, on my other videos, on Twitter, just send it to me and make sure you label that you want it answered on the show, and I will certainly do so, and your question will be on here. You will get a shout out. It's a great time. So yeah, please submit any questions you have about anything Division related, and thank you so much to everyone who submitted for this week. That was a lot of fun going through and answering your guys' questions. It is now time to announce the topics for next week's show that you guys are going to vote on. Again, as you're hearing my words right now, I should have posted a poll on my community tab for you to go vote on these 3 big topics for next week's central topic for me to discuss before we get into the questions. And those are, first one, survival. Why was it so good in Division 1? And will it come back in the future of the franchise? So that's 1. 2, expeditions, what they could have been and what went wrong with them in the Division 2. That's another topic. And the third one is the bugs, technical state, and reception of the Division versus the rest of the video game industry. I've had some more insights on this lately, and it's something that I would really like to elaborate on. So those are the 3 big topics. Again, go vote on that right now in my community tab for next week's episode. You can also just let me know in the comments of this video which one you are most interested in, and I can use that to gauge as well. So definitely go vote on that, guys. And again, that will be the one of those three will be the core topic of next week's show. That's going to do it for episode 1 of Proximity Coverage. Thank you all so very much for tuning in to the pilot episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Certainly leave me any and all of your feedback in the comments as on your thoughts of the episode, what you liked, what I could possibly improve for future episodes, anything like that. And again, next week we will begin having central topics that I spend a good portion of time giving my thoughts on. The introductory portion of this episode was simply because this is the pilot. Thanks again, everyone, and to anyone who submitted questions. And again, if you are listening right now and you have anything you want me to answer on future episodes of the show, leave it down below or anywhere you can reach me. If you enjoyed this pilot episode, I sincerely hope to see you back for episode 2. I don't think I'm going to make this a weekday show. I just wanted to put this on New Year's Eve for the novelty of it, but you can expect episode 2 to drop around 9 to 10 days from now, next Saturday or Sunday. From there, I hope I can keep a weekly schedule on it. One last reminder to go vote for episode 2's primary topic. You can do so right now by casting your vote on the poll I've posted in my channel's community tab. And once more, additionally, leave any questions for future weeks. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Have a great day. And until the next one, guys, RogueGold, out.